Welcome to another episode of In the Nude. I want to talk about authenticity. It's been a really hot topic. Like, it's been a thing that you see everywhere. But I want to break down what it is and its impact in correlation to life, right? Authenticity is just basically the idea of you being you. For somebody who's been through trauma, that might be a very hard experience depending on your coping mechanisms. For me, being authentic and knowing what that is was not a simple process. It was like unwinding a coil that was like bound tight. Like, have you ever put or seen somebody put in a garage door? It was like that, okay? If you haven't, maybe watch a video because no thank you. But that's kind of how it felt for me and has felt for me during this process of me trying to figure out who I am, because I had emptied myself and offloaded myself so much to become what other people needed that it left me behind, right? Okay, but this idea of authenticity is you being you and living out you being you. How does this play a part in your life, right? Well, when you can be authentic, you're naturally going to pull in things that are fitting and good for you, and you're naturally going to push away things that aren't. Think about when you've met people, right? And you naturally have this like inclination towards, yeah, like I enjoyed that person or I did not enjoy that person, right? And even if somebody doesn't like you as you, there is this attractive nature to someone being themselves. You can respect it even if you don't like them, right? But on top of external factors of other people, the more that you come into a place of being yourself and residing with yourself, it comes with this like resonating peace, this flow state. You know, when you get into a task you love, whether you paint or you write or you read or you play video games, and you just like lose track of time and you're having so much fun playing and whatever that is, right? It's kind of like that, but you live in that kind of frequency, that kind of vibe of being yourself. There's so many impacts to how this can like play a part, right? So we lose our authenticity as kids because we're trying to fit the narrative of being a good kid, right? We're trying to survive our situation, achieve love, and a lot of the times that means us having to put off ourselves, not because ourselves are bad, but because ourselves are not what the other person is requiring from us, right? We have to appease or hold space for somebody else's feelings that was never actually our responsibility, but in our situation it was put on us, and therefore to survive a situation we had to take it on. So in this world of people talking about authenticity, how do you go about like living it, doing it, and how can it impact and grow in your situation? So for each person, finding what's them isn't gonna be as much as like any type A perfectionist person might want it to be. It isn't gonna be this checklist. It isn't going to be okay, do this tool and this exercise and all of a sudden you're there, right? It's going to be a process of exploration. So for me, it started with I could know things that I didn't like better than things I did like, if that makes any sense. So like, for example, if you asked me what my favorite food was, I couldn't answer that, but I could tell you I really didn't like American Chinese food, right? And I may feel really niche, and it is to a certain degree, but that was something that I could do. So sometimes it's easier to start off with things we don't like. Now, that isn't necessarily the best mentality or focus continuously, because when you focus on something you don't want, you naturally see more of it and bring more of it to you. But it can be a starting place if that's the only place you have for things. I don't like this. Therefore, if I don't like that, maybe I would like this, right? But it's a starting place. But it's going to take exploration. And sometimes in that process, like, here's a silly story. I grew up, two of my brothers work for Jersey Mike's, right? I don't know if you know about Jersey Mike's, but it's a food sandwich shop, right? And they have their sandwiches numbered instead of having names necessarily. They have names too, but they had numbers, right? And my brothers worked there, and in my childhood, in my head, number 13 was always my favorite, and done Mike's way, which is a particular topping section or whatever. Long story short is, I had this viewpoint that that was my favorite sandwich. As an adult, after I started my healing process, I got a sandwich that is essentially that sandwich. I took a bite of it, and I hated it. I hated it. And so I sat with myself, and I realized the reason I liked it is because it was the food I was given. And so I determined in my head I had to like it because I was going to have to eat it. And that's a perfectly feasible coping mechanism for a kid to do, but I don't actually like it. So that the exploration can be actually frustrating when you think you know things and you figure out you don't actually like them. You were just required to like them because of their circumstances. But it takes exploration. So like, it's going to be a little bit of scientific method, and you can find it really annoying, as I did, but you can also rebrand it in your head and be like, you know what, this is me dating me and getting to know me. But like finding out if, okay, I'm frustrated in this situation, does a bath sound good? And just going with your gut. Oh no, I don't want to get wet and have to handle that. Awesome. Does going into a quiet room, okay, well, it's not off the table, but it's not necessarily yes. Does having a piece of chocolate? Okay. No judgments. You want a piece of chocolate. Let's try that, right? You can also associate the fact that if you're wanting chocolate, it might be serotonin and dopamine you're looking for, which can be had in a lot of different ways too. So not saying chocolate's a devil, definitely enjoy it, but you get the heart behind it, right? But it's going to be this exploration, and one of the ways is going to be pushing yourself to do things where you're uncomfortable, where you're having to do something that's new and different and awkward. Because it's kind of like, have you ever gone on a date with somebody or a friend and you do something you guys have never done before and all of a sudden you're bonded by it, whether it was a positive experience or a bad experience? You can build that same bonding experience with yourself, requiring yourself to do things that are uncomfortable. And you can start with tiny things. Like, for example, you may not like the idea of walking in grass barefoot. Require yourself to try it. You may not like having to go on a walk outside and not listen to anything. Try it. See if you don't actually like it. These pushings of our bounds both showcase to ourselves that we can do things we're uncomfortable with, which grows our general confidence level. But on top of it, it forces us to explore things and try things to see what we like and what we don't like. And the more we understand what we do like and we don't like, and we have these bonding experiences with ourselves, the more we can have these foundational levels of what is aligned for us. It's like creating content, right? If you've ever done that experience, the more you create content, it's uncomfortable and weird and quirky and you're putting yourself out there and all that, but you slowly but surely figure out things that you want to talk about and you are passionate about. If you are a teacher coming through different ideas of how you present a thing and how like you whittle through, like, oh, that didn't work that well that time, but maybe try it this way, right? But you're doing that same exploration for yourself. And you can find these, like, how does this impact, right? It impacts in so many diverse ways, but like, here's an example. Sometimes we can feel stuck in something, right? We can feel like we're just hitting our head against the wall. We don't understand why we're not moving forward, we're not progressing, and we keep hitting our head against the wall. Sometimes it takes doing something different to actually get a different viewpoint on our past. Because that removal of our situation and being able to see it from a different way can give us inspiration, give us understanding of what's happening. We get so locked in on fear of approval of others that we'll abdicate ourselves for their opinion. We're essentially saying, I'm so afraid that you're going to reject me. I'm telling myself that your opinion is more important than my opinion. Your thoughts on my life is more important than my thoughts on my life. And when we do that, it's this shutdown of energy, this shutdown of frequency, this shutdown of ourselves, and we abdicate ourselves. And with that, there is this drudgery that we keep hitting the same wall because we can't break through, because that wall is actually us putting up a blockade. And it's really difficult to face the fears of judgment. It's really difficult to face the fears of new and what ifs and who does she think she is? But that ostentatious level of I'm going to be me even if there's judgment is an inspiration to ourselves to be able to fully enjoy our lives and say my opinion of my life matters than your opinion of my life, because it's true. You're the only one who's having to live your life. And if it's not like choices that are deeply affecting another person, like say you have a child, okay, yeah, there's some level of like that's going to impact. But the general populace of Karens out there, their life and their opinions of your life are none of your business. None of your business. But we take them on like they are. We take them on like it's a higher priority and we're tearing ourselves down. And with that becomes more self-rejection. And self-rejection is not a place of healing, is not a place of alignment, is not a place of authenticity, and is a place of handcuffs when you don't want to live in constraints. So sometimes it's going to take you having to have grace and compassion for yourself in that moment and sit with yourself about the fact it's reasonable that you're afraid of those people. But that fear isn't going to help you live the life you want to live. You can acknowledge the fact it's real. You can acknowledge the fact it's fair, but that doesn't mean you stay in it. It also might take you, like I said, removing yourself from the situation to be able to even see it. But the more we can come home to ourselves, the more that we can become more who we are and strip away. Like, so much of my life of who I thought I was, this persona of who Rachel was not actually me, but amalgamation of coping mechanisms and personas of other people that I took on. Hilariously, when I was married, I felt like I needed to like coffee the way that my partner liked coffee. That may sound ridiculous, but in my head, like, I had to like coffee. Even though I hated the coffee, I had to figure out how to like the coffee. And I wouldn't even admit that I hated the coffee because I had to figure out how to like it, because in a world where that person wanted to have more coffee, I should have my coffee ready for them. It tells a lot about how I was raised. But anyway, there's this rejection of self. There's this isolation. All of these things of we empty ourselves and we put other people on. I had to be the person who was willing and able and always the person who could take on more and never, like, I was never defeated. That isn't me. That isn't safety. That's handcuffs. Having to do everything on your own. And that doesn't mean trust everybody. That does not mean trust everybody. But it does mean that you can have other people and have help, and it's not a negative on you. In fact, it is a strength, because vulnerability, being able to say, I can't do it all, being willing to say, I messed up, vulnerability is strength, even though it feels the opposite. In the same way that surrender, like letting go and into the flow, actually gives you security when it feels like it's really unstable because it's not in our control. But the truth is, every time we grasp for control, we actually handcuff and lock ourselves into a life that doesn't actually fit for us. And in that same way, when we're going for another person's approval, we're denying ourselves our own approval. And that is a literal cage. Like, there's a river, right? And you have the option to lift your legs and flow with the river. And that river is authenticity. That river is the natural, like, universe or God or whatever, divine, any type of like labeling you want to put it, but it's the natural flow of how things come to you and go from you when you just are being yourself. When we reject our self and our opinion of what we should be doing and our preferences of what we should be doing because of somebody else's fear, it is like we're actively sitting inside of a cage in the river. And we're just letting the river pass us by, and we're just like, no, we're just going to stay here. And then we get so mad that we're hitting our head against the wall, but we have rejected ourselves. We have locked ourselves in. And it is a hard, painful process of we're sitting there, we're locked in and white fisting this cage. And we often want to just like pull our fingers and pry our fingers free, when what will actually get us, if you're in that place of having locked yourself in and you're hitting your head against the wall and you realize, okay, yeah, it is me denying myself and my authenticity for somebody else's opinion about my life. You trying to just pry yourself free or judge yourself for that process is not the path to get you out of it. It's sitting with yourself and giving yourself compassion to allow yourself to relax enough to release the cage. To sit with yourself and say, no wonder you're sitting here afraid of other people's opinions, because your safety for so long was indicated on whether you behaved in the way that somebody else external voted into your life what behaved looked like. That's fair. That's completely normal. You did that for so long and it was coping and it made you survive, and that is an honorable thing for yourself to have done for yourself to survive. But it's no longer fitting. But it's allowing yourself the capability and understanding to sit with yourself and say, you know what? You helped me so far, but it's time for you now to take on a different job. You're released from this. And giving yourself the space to have it be a process, to have the space to have compassion and understanding for what you have lived through, and the fact that it's going to have time periods where you're going to keep hitting the same type of triggers and the same type of problems and the same type of coping. Because every situation can remind you cyclically, it's kind of like grief, right? Like if you've ever gone through a loss, It isn't like you just, oh, and then I released it. There's going to be time periods where it comes back and you didn't realize there's something else you didn't work through. Or when you have done so well for like not people pleasing or whatever, but then you go back into an old dynamic and you find yourself responding in old you ways, unhealed, unauthentic ways. That's fair. But the more that we can choose to sit with ourselves and question our gut and go with our gut, like question what works for us, align. What is it we want in this moment? I feel like I'm being hungry. Am I hungry, or am I just wanting to escape into food and get dopamine? I feel stressed. What is it I can do right now that would help me? Is it looking at details of a flower? Is it taking some deep breaths? Is it going on a walk and just listening? Is it sitting down for a minute and doing a puzzle? Figuring out and exploring, and without judgment, figuring out what works for us and trying to explore that gut level of, oh, yeah, that sounds good, or no, and not judging yourself for it. The more we can do that, the more we come home to ourselves. And the more we come home to ourselves, the natural tendency is authenticity. And the more we are aligned with just being ourselves, life begins to flow. It doesn't have to be this work. We can release the idea that the life we want and the success we want and the locations and things we want to do have to be arduous work. It doesn't. We've been sold this pack of lies that we keep pulling onto ourselves because it's a control. If we work hard enough, that's something we feel like is in our control. But just release it. This journey of life you have is meant to be enjoyed. And part of that enjoyment is you figuring out what is enjoyable for you. Is figuring out what you want and being okay with the fact that it's going to come at the cost of other people's approval. You were never meant to get their approval. You were never meant to take on their judgments. Be free of it. Free yourself for yourself.